Valencia, late 2025. Marc Marquez crosses the finish line. He's done it. His 9th world title. His 7th in the Premier class.
Marc Marquez is the 2025 MotoGP World Champion.
The crowd is a sea of red, not for his old Honda colours, but for his new Ducati family. They're chanting his name. He's crying in his helmet. He is a hero, a legend. The comeback is complete. Now, hold that image in your head and remember this. For the better part of a decade, this same man was the most hated rider on the grid. The villain, the guy who ended Valentino Rossi's career, the ruthless monster who riders were terrified of. The guy who got booed so loudly on the podium you could barely hear the anthems. So what happened? How do you go from being the villain everyone wants to lose to the hero everyone is crying for? You have to lose everything first. To understand the hero, you must first have to understand the villain. And from his arrival in MotoGP in 2013, Marc Marquez was hated about as much as the ultimate villain of the MCU, Brie Larson. He wasn't just fast, he was a glitch in the Matrix. An alien talent like those before him who rode a motorcycle in a way that defied the laws of physics. His signature move was the impossible save, dragging his elbow and knee on the ground at 68 degrees of lean angle, somehow wrestling a falling bike back into submission. It shouldn't have been possible, yet he did it every other weekend. He won the championship in his rookie season, the first to do so in 35 years, and he did it with a brand of ruthless, unapologetic aggression that terrified his rivals. He saw gaps that didn't exist. He treated his rivals' bikes as braking markers, and he rode with a complete disregard for the unwritten rules of respect. His older, more experienced rivals like Danny Pedrosa and Jorge Lorenzo were legends in their own right. Marquez treated them like they were in his way, eventually and effectively ending both of their careers through sheer, relentless pressure. But his defining rivalry, the one that cemented his villain status forever, was with the God King of MotoGP himself, Valentino Rossi. In 2015, their feud exploded at Sepang in Malaysia. A bitter, on-track battle ended with the infamous clash where Rossi appeared to run Marquez wide, causing him to crash. The world of MotoGP split in two. You were either with Rossi or against him. And Marquez, the young upstart who dared to challenge MotoGP royalty, became public enemy number one. He was booed on podiums, he was hated by millions, and he didn't care. He just kept winning. From 2016 to 2019, he won 4 straight titles, dominating the sport so completely it was almost boring. He was the perfect villain, untouchable, arrogant, and better than everyone else. An empire of one. Every great villain has a moment of delusional overconfidence.
I was like, that one right there made you the greatest player of all time.
A fatal flaw. Marquez's was his belief that he was invincible. July 19th, 2020, the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez. The first race of a delayed season. Marquez was doing what he always did, make the impossible look easy. Early in the race, he has a massive moment, the bike sliding out from under him in what should have been a crash. He performs another one of his signature, logic-defying saves, somehow staying on the bike and running through the gravel. He rejoins the race in 18th place. What followed was 20 laps of pure, undiluted genius. He sliced through the field, passing rider after rider with surgical aggression. It was a recovery ride for the ages. He was back up to 3rd place, hunting down 2nd. He was proving once again that he was simply on another level. And then it happened. Pushing too hard, asking too much of the bike and of physics, he has a vicious high side crash. The bike snaps sideways and catapults him into the air. He lands hard, his right arm taking the full impact of both his body and the front wheel of his 350-pound Honda. The silence was deafening. The alien had been hellfired into a couple of pieces. The villain was broken. The humerus bone in his right arm was shattered. His reign was over, or so we thought. The real nightmare was just beginning. What happened next wasn't a story of recovery. It was a descent into hell. The kind of hell usually reserved for your favorite characters in a Saw movie. Instead of letting their superstar heal, the doctors and the team rushed him back. Just 4 days after having a titanium plate screwed in his shattered arm, Marquez was back at the track, trying to race. This wasn't a decision with no consequences. The plate, stressed beyond its limits, snapped. He needed a second surgery. Then came a bone infection. He needed a third 8-hour surgery involving a bone graft from his pelvis. He spent 10 days in hospital. The man who seemed invincible was now fighting just to save his arm, let alone his career. He missed the entire 2020 season. When he finally returned in 2021, he wasn't the same. He was riding in pain, a shadow of his former self. Then, a training accident caused the return of diplopia, double vision, an old injury that left him seeing 2 of everything. For a motorcycle racer, it's a terrifying, career-ending condition. He needed a 4th radical surgery in the US, where doctors literally had to re-break and rotate his arm bone by 30 degrees because it had healed incorrectly. While all this was happening, the Honda empire, as we detailed in our last video, was crumbling around him. The bike he once dominated on was now an unrideable monster. This was the humbling. The villain, stripped of his superpowers, was now a tragic figure, fighting a war on 2 fronts, against his own broken body and against a broken motorcycle. The boos from the crowd had been replaced by a sympathetic, almost pitying silence. In late 2023, he made the most painful decision of his life. He walked away from the final year of his massive Honda contract, the biggest in MotoGP history, to ride a year-old customer Ducati for the satellite Grassini team for basically no salary. This was the ultimate humiliation. The king was leaving his castle to go and live in a rented apartment with a couple of randoms just for a chance to feel competitive again. He had to lose everything to find out what he had left. His first year on the Ducati in 2024 was a revelation. It wasn't about winning, not at first. It was about rediscovering the joy of riding. For the first time in years, Marquez was seen smiling in the garage, genuinely smiling. The pressure of carrying an entire factory on his broken shoulders was gone. He was just a dude riding again, and he was having fun. Of course, the old instincts were still there. He crashed a lot, pushing the limits of a new bike he didn't fully understand. But then the flashes of the old magic started to return. A podium here, a pole position there. He was fighting at the front again, battling with the new kings of the Ducati Empire, like Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin. And a funny thing happened. The crowds started to cheer for him. The fans who had spent years booing him were now on their feet, applauding his comeback. They weren't just seeing the ruthless villain anymore. They were seeing a human being who had been to hell and back, fighting his way back to the top with grit and a newfound humility. By the end of the year, he had done enough. Ducati made the call. For 2025, he was promoted to the factory team. The rebirth was complete. Now it was time for the redemption. The 2025 season was supposed to be a year of learning, a year of recovery. Marquez, now on the factory Ducati, was expected to be competitive, sure, but after years of pain and struggle, nobody expected what was about to happen. It wasn't a comeback, it was a conquest. From the very start of the season, the old Marquez was back, but with the added wisdom of his suffering. He wasn't just winning, he was dominating. He won 6 of the first 10 races, building an insane 83-point lead by the halfway mark of the season. The rest of the paddock, who thought they had a few years before the real Marc returned, were in a state of shock. His closest challenger was, poetically, his own brother, Alex Marquez, who put together a career-best season on the Grassini machine. The defending champion, Pecco Bagnaia, mounted a late surge, but simply couldn't match the relentless, crushing pace of the reborn number 93. Meanwhile, the pre-season favourite, Jorge Martin, was tragically sidelined by injuries, unable to even take part in the fight. The battle for number 9 didn't end with a nail-biting finale. It ended with a knockout blow. At the Japanese Grand Prix, with a full 5 races still left to go, Marc Marquez mathematically clinched his 7th Premier Class title. The redemption arc didn't end with a photo finish. It ended with an exclamation point. The fallen king hadn't just reclaimed his throne, he had rebuilt the entire castle and reminded everyone who was in charge. The championship wasn't decided in a tense last race showdown. The new Marc Marquez was too dominant for that. He had mathematically secured his 9th title a few races earlier at the historic Motegi circuit in Japan. But the racing gods, with their sick sense of humor, decided the hero's journey needed one last cruel chapter. In Indonesia, a tangle with Marco Bezzecchi sent him tumbling into the gravel. The result? A broken collarbone. It was a brutal final test. A stark reminder that in this sport, nothing is guaranteed until the very end. Just when he thought the war was over, a ghost of his past, the spectre of injury, returned to haunt him. And that's why Valencia will be different. This won't just be a homecoming. It will be a vigil of hope, the final race of the season. The pressure to win the title is gone, replaced by a much more fundamental question. Can he even ride? After years of fighting his own broken body, he faces one last race against time to recover. The crowd won't just be there to celebrate a champion, they'll be there to will him onto the grid. The villain they once booed will be the hero they are now collectively hoping for. If he makes it back, if he can ride through the pain one last time, crossing that finish line won't be another victory. It will be the ultimate symbol of his return. The 9th world title is already in the history books. This party, this final race, will be about the man who simply refused to stay broken. Marc Marquez's first 7 championships made him a legend. but it will be his 9th that makes him a hero. He had to lose his invincibility to gain his humanity. He had to be broken, humbled, and humiliated to finally win the respect of the very fans who used to despise him. His story is no longer just about being the fastest. It's about resilience, a resilience tested not just over 4 agonizing years, but right up to the final, painful weeks of his triumphant season. It's about the courage to walk away from an empire you built, to bet on yourself when everyone else thinks you're finished. The old Marquez was a villain we watched in awe. The new Marquez is a hero we can all understand. And that's why this championship, the one that almost never happened, will go down as his greatest achievement, not because of the number, but because of the man he had to become to win it.